Final stop, Brazil. Book 2, chapter 56. The rescue is near. In this same week, something happened that first began like a modern fairy tale, which grew new hope in me, and finally provided the impetus for me to put everything on one card in order to ultimately lose everything. Like every day, I looked at the incoming emails to see if there was an interest in buying the hotel. Once again, it seemed not to be the case. However, a German email caught my eye. Search for business contacts in Brazil. Need 50,000 tons of coconut shell. Purchase of hotel also as possible. Serious business. I doubted this at first by the amount of coconut shells. But I read the email again and again. Murillo wanted to know whether this was a potential buyer. For my colleagues, I translated this email. A hot discussion began whether it was worthwhile to enter this business. My colleagues were cautious. They were deterred by the immense amount of coconut shell. Not me. I carefully asked details in my reply email. In order to give it an operational touch, I added the question whether this man had interest in buying the hotel, and put our contact information below the text. The thought that this man apparently was looking for someone first who translated for him, because that probably was prerequisite for making contacts, and that for me it would be worthwhile, had me hooked. Repeatedly I brought the issue to my colleagues. I wanted to know of them if it was possible to obtain these quantities. Opinions differed. Then my boss called me into his office and wanted to know what exactly the email meant. I tried to appear indifferent, even though I was nervous, translated the email, pointed out that the man had no interest in buying the hotel. It seems to be an interesting business with the coconut shells. Translate me the entire email and send it to me, said my boss. I saw myself on the loser side again. If my boss was getting involved in it, I would end up again with a normal salary. Why should I be lucky for once? Bad-humored, I did my work, distracted me with my awkward, and answered some letters to my personal ad. This I was doing just to pass the time, because it did not make sense anyway. The next day our boss didn't come into the office, which always pleased me particularly. I could surf the internet, continue to write my book, rummage in the awkward, and chat without disturbance. The official duties being put on me, I usually had them done in with 1 hour. Then a Skype call came in with open camera. It was the man from Germany, who explained me now his business and his plan, told me personally things of himself, remarked that he thought it a pity not to see me because the video camera which had been installed on my PC was later given to a colleague. I had the impression he was a serious businessman. From that moment on, I knew what I had to do. One more day I waited if my boss would get involved in it, for if he did, he had to pass me for the translation. But nothing came of him, so I got started once again, spoke to my colleagues, offered them to enter, because they all had computers at home, except me. In this case, I would have taken only the translation part. The main thing was that more money was coming out of it for me than the current salary. My colleagues still held back, but I began to search the web for the 50,000 tons of coconut shell. I wrote to enterprises of coconut products and any kind of producer. But initially nothing happened. But give up? No. This was my only chance to escape from this shitty job, and I took it as a saving straw. Suddenly, I managed 2 jobs at once. In the evenings, I made plans what I had to do the next day. On the weekends, I was sitting at Icaro's computer and placed ads myself. I was permanently under stress because I never knew how long I could use the computer. The German entrepreneur gave me daily new instructions what I had to do, and I carried them out. He seemed to be more than happy because a few days later I received an email from him in which he asked me how much one had to earn in Brazil to lead a decent life. I quickly calculated, then wrote him what I earned, and for a reasonably life would be needed approximately 2,500 reais, an equivalent to about 820 euro. This number was certainly no exaggeration. I also let him know that I had in my home neither computer nor internet access, but required both urgently if he seriously wanted me to work for him. I pointed out that I was working for him at my desk with my boss's computer, which was working illegally, and this should not be permanent. The first responses to my ad had reached me by now concerning the coconut shell. Every detail I shared with him. During the next days, more answers, including a good contact from Fortaleza. A young man of great ambition was willing to help me and wanted to make more contacts in the countryside of Ceará with owners of coconut plantations. At his second call, we discussed details, and I got to like him immediately. I was on the right track and had now even support. My new German client wrote that he planned to set up a contract for me. As soon as it was ready, he would send it to me for signature. After I had sent it back, he wanted to grant me an advance payment. I cheered. At last I had made it. Not much longer, and I would be able to leave this job in the hotel, which I now only performed with reluctance. I was pretty sure that this man would send about half of the amount as a prepayment. I had told him to lead a reasonable, rational life. All my hopes were now on this man. If he really gave me a contract, I did not even need a visa or work permit, let alone get married. My anticipation was even greater when he mentioned to send me a notebook. I could not believe my luck, but Fabio dampened my joy. Rita, leave it. If he sends you a laptop, you pay 60% import tax on the value of goods. Convince him that it is better to send you the money and you buy a laptop here. This, however, I had to handle with care, because he didn't know me good enough to make any demands. But I mentioned to him that I would have to make some phone calls to some suppliers, because details could not be cleared by email. But I lacked the financial means to make national phone calls, because the offers came now from all over Brazil. Again, I received an email him asking me to give him my bank account. Additionally, he wanted an all-round flight schedule from Germany to Sao Paulo, from Sao Paulo to Paraguay, and back to Germany, or alternatively Germany, Salvador, and some good hotels. I compiled it all for him with prices, flight schedules, and slowly got the impression of being his private secretary. It cost me great effort not to let my boss notice nothing of my second job, which filled me more than my first. But in between, I even had time for Moraes, Carlos, and Clayton, and all the other internet acquaintances. Clayton appeared to be very dear, opened his camera, and let me participate in some music sessions and rehearsals. We wrote as often and discussed much about music, but also about other things. He allowed me to enter his orchid. His was locked, and understandably to be viewed only with explicit permission. I saw many private photos of Pichotti and other stars like Bello and Tiaguinho, etc. Some I copied for my private collection. Carlos was an admirer of Rio de Janeiro. Also seemed to be very nice, was absolutely my type, but I discussed with him almost daily about the futility of this distance. He didn't take it very seriously, but I felt a little hurt. Moraes, however, was the only serious person who also took me serious, appreciated my activities, and also that I had wrote a book he was very impressed about. For me, he gave the impression to be intelligent, competent, and hardworking. Unfortunately, in his orchid was not a photo, but he described himself as Moreno. That all my activities wouldn't go well in the long run was obvious. My boss called me into his office one day where I had to listen that it was not permitted surfing the orchid during working hours. Well, at least he didn't notice that I was working for someone else during work hours. He had the impression that I didn't take serious some interested buyers. The one who didn't take interested buyers or serious was surely not I, but he himself. Totally right. The ones with no serious buying intentions I really didn't take serious. And I had a nose for the ones that might buy, and the others that just stole my time, simply out of boredom. But no one believed me. I just hoped to be able to throw the job soon. I had quite simply lost all motivation, and staying without my people in the orchard, absolutely impossible. Hence, I didn't go to lunch anymore, spent instead this hour in the orchard and in the live chat. At home, I didn't have anyone I could talk to. Italva had received a letter from Elke, my sister. She wrote that our old lady wasn't well at all. After the joint holidays, she had not recognized her own flat anymore. For 2 weeks she stayed in the hospital, but it was not better since then. She still was convinced she had moved, so she wouldn't even recognize me anymore. To think about it much I had no time, though, on this long weekend, because Italva and Icaro were traveling to the interior of Bahia. So I took the opportunity and worked virtually Saturday and Sunday, day and night, even forgetting to eat something, fighting on all fronts, continued in between to write on my book, but mainly made new business contacts, took care of the ones I had already, and tried to negotiate and calculate the cost of transport. Sunday evening I was completely flattened. The Monday was a holiday. I stayed home, cooked for me, and watched movies with my DVD player. Once again, I felt that I had a flu coming up. In the evening, I felt miserable. I had fever, but still went to work on Tuesday. Even held out until closing time. But then my limit was reached, and I reported sick. Until late in the morning, I stayed in bed, but somehow I had to get up to take a ride to the Posto de Saúde. It was still too early for the risk to lose my job, so I needed a sick note. Without problems, I received a sick note from the doctor, who examined me superficially for this one day. Astonished, I asked, "And what if I still don't feel better tomorrow?" "Well, then you come back again tomorrow." I was speechless. The doctor clearly stated that I had high fever, could barely look out of my eyes, had a strong cough, and my nose was running, while waiting for an injection I was supposed to receive. I looked more closely at the sick note and read, "The attending physician is authorized to give sick notes to patients between 1 and 15 days. This cow, furious, I stomped directly back into the treatment room, passing all the other people waiting. The doctor had already gone to lunch. I made a big scandal until I was sent to the chief doctor. From this one, I was told that he didn't get involved in the work of his colleagues. Now you listen. You can surely see from afar that I have high fever and work cold or flu. Do you think it's good to come back tomorrow and stand in this queue again? Or that it's good to infect other patients unnecessary?" I was outraged. It was no use. The decision was up to the patient's physician. We're here only assholes. Resigned, I gave up. Went to the pharmacy across the street to buy me other drugs and on the prescription because it was too expensive for my wallet, and finally took a bus home. I could hardly keep my eyes open. The drugs made me sleep immediately. The day after, I felt no better, of course, but I had no other choice than to go back to the Posto de Saúde. Another doctor who recognized that I was really sick gave me 3 more days. The rest of this week I stayed in bed. Almost a week lost with my new and seemingly yielding activity. Instead of resting another day, I took the opportunity to go to the CAB to meet my probation and give my signature. But this I did with mixed feelings. I felt still miserable and hoped that nothing would happen, because during this week numerous buses had gone up in flames and the terror continued. These actions were the response of criminals for the relocation of a drug boss into a maximum security prison. The population of Salvador was living in fear. Using the public transport was now more dangerous than usual, although it was actually always a risk to use buses in Salvador. On average, 50 buses daily were attacked and passengers robbed. It was quite clear what danger I put myself in, but I had to go there without having to invent another excuse to take a day off. Everything went well and relieved. I returned to Itapua, where I had to change the bus. Previously, I forced myself to go to an internet cafe to briefly check my emails, and found more than 40 emails on my account. 4 hours I rummaged through them, found among others wishes to get better from a German client. Meanwhile, he had reduced the desired amount of coconut shell to 20,000 tons. That made it a lot easier for me, of course. But urgently, I had to call some potential suppliers. Clear that not all would phone me. Finally, I wanted something of them, and not the other way round. So I made it clear once again that I urgently needed Skype at home. He should act now. It was indeed in his interest. Saturday I spent with Italva and Icaro. Everything went more and more against the grain. Although I loved them both, it bugged me that Italva, my substitute mom, just did not understand that I wasn't there neither to eat, nor for pleasure, but for work. She cooked for me and fussed about me more than usual because I still had the flu, coming up with syrup and tea, but I would rather have had coffee, and I was thirsty. For me it was only lemon juice. I knew she did it all out of love, but I just wanted to work in peace as long as Icaro gave me the opportunity, and this was not long on Saturday. Since no one was online anyway, I continued writing my book. That seemed to be endless because I just had no chance to write. I hoped that this German man kept his promise, and I soon would have a notebook, or better, could buy it myself. When Icaro needed the computer, I went unceremoniously over to the bar of Liège, who always rejoiced to see me, and actually had an ice-cold cola first of all. Sunday, I ventured once again to meet with a man. There were still a few people writing or phoning me as reply to my ad. Most called 2 or 3 times, said they really wanted to get to know me, really loved my photo, and that was it then. I never heard of them again. Somewhere I had given up long ago, but I had to be careful not to confuse the numerous names. Giuliano was really not my type, overweight, wearing glasses, white. They were not only stupid here, apparently none could read either. I had made it more than clear in my message, negro or moreno. Nevertheless, it was quite a nice afternoon. We rode in his car, well, at least he had one, to the Lagoa Abaeche, an idyllic lake in a park in Itapua. But even in this idyllic place was a lot of noise in every corner. In other words, Bahian music was played. I still didn't feel very fit yet, so soon after our walk, I asked this guy to take me to São Cristóvão. In order to spare any embarrassment, I declined with thanks from his offer to take me home. The only reason that made me keep going back to work was my expectation of positive emails. And indeed, the man from Germany wrote that he would transfer 1,000 euros during the next few days. I couldn't hide my happiness and cheered loudly. It was just under 3,000 reais. My colleagues shared my joy. For this reason, he now needed urgently my bank account. Also, the contract he wanted to send me, I should sign and return as soon as possible. Nothing better than that. Today rather than tomorrow, I would have given up my job here. There was nothing more to do here for me. I was convinced that my boss didn't even want to sell the hotel anymore. Somehow he didn't know what he was supposed to do with me, and I was sure that I would be dismissed sooner or later. In my mind, I saw myself already at the dentist, that I needed more urgently than anything else, because I was in danger of losing my teeth. After over 3 years of malnutrition, my gums had receded so much so that all tooth snags were exposed. In addition, I planned to pay a new lawyer, who had assured me already to obtain a visa for me, but he wanted 4,000 reais. Up to now, it was unthinkable for me. New clothes I needed urgently, because my pants were secured only with belts. Everything was too big, but neither are there miracles nor modern tales, and especially not for me. After I let the German man have the bank details of Vitalva's account, he answered in another email that he was having some problems with his Polish company. He had to travel there, and unfortunately there was no time to take care of the money transfer or the contract. However, he was going to do this in the following week. My nerves were strained. How much longer would I have to endure this cold in the office and be without a computer, which meant not getting anywhere with my book? This was the only chance I had to escape this shit life. If this didn't work out, nothing would. And again, I passed a lonely weekend, having too much time to brood. Saturday and Sunday, I just felt like crying. I hated weekends. I hated my job and Bahia in general. Even though it was 31 degrees, hot on Saturday, and perfect beach weather, I took the bus to Lucia's restaurant to congratulate Katya for her birthday. Lucia was very busy. I wanted to know why I heard nothing more after I gave her assistant the money for Fabiano, and asked him to go to the registry office to ask Mr. Sergio to call me, so I finally got a clear answer whether I was allowed to get married or not. Lucia evaded me. You have to ask Mora yourself. I know nothing about it. I didn't quite believe her. Katya appeared now from somewhere and was glad indeed that I had not forgotten her birthday, but I felt pretty stupid there. Secretly, I was angry with myself for not having gone to the beach. I wondered what I was doing there. Between all the Baianos, I was a stranger, and would always remain so. The warmth of the beginning diminished very quickly. I hadn't learned this for the first time. Hastily, I took my leave, but not without letting Lucia know that there would be no marriage, because I just couldn't make it on my own and without help. In the bus, I decided spontaneously to go all the way to the lighthouse of Itapua, rather than coming off in Itinga. I had not been there yet, and it was the only thing I could think at that moment for not having to sit alone in my house all day. Indeed, a glorious sight was offered to me of the sea and the lighthouse. I sat down, and my thoughts wandered off to the double life I was forced to live. At work, no one knew how lonely I felt here in Salvador. I could fake a good mood there, and my male colleagues loved me for my humor and my openness, even if they shared not always my opinion. As before, I received many compliments from people in the Okut. The contacts I established by the business were all very positive, and it soon developed an almost friendly atmosphere. Ratinho from Fortaleza called me jokingly his Rainha, queen, and I had tamed him already so far that he was jumping to my tune. He would have been an ideal mate or business partner for me, easy to manage with a few nice words. On the other hand, I had plenty of negotiations, and thus had a real sense of success. I didn't only get together the required amount of coconut shells, but also pressed the producers under the price, which was offered by Thailand. The people were ready to conclude the deal. Unfortunately, as always at the weekend, my German client was out of reach by Friday afternoon. At least by email and for phone calls, I had absolutely no possibility. Nevertheless, I had been in a celebratory mood and joined my colleagues after work to the beach stop where delicious pastels were served. I was entertaining the entire table and made my colleagues laugh. All around me, I always managed to entertain people, but to win a partner for me, that I wasn't able to. There were men who had serious interest in me, but in those I was not interested, even if they owned cars or anything else. Just like the second of this week. He drove a nice car, made good money as a stockbroker. I was just not my type. I knew already that I would not accept his invitation this evening. Finally, I roused myself and walked in a tight step with my feet inside the water, without looking left or right, to the center of Itapua. The walk felt good, but happy I wasn't. How nice it would have been to have at least Sampa with me. Of one of the peddlers, I bought 2 new DVDs, 2 films, so I had at least some distraction, and took the bus home. Home? This was not my home. But where was my home? Like often recently, I went to bed early. The movies I left for Sunday, because here it was costing money already just to put the foot out the door. So I decided to stay in the house, even though it was bright sunshine outside. I watched the movies and then changed to the television program. In the evening, I received a call of Diego, one of these candidates, still answering my ad. He came also with his car to Itinga, and reluctantly, I met with him in front of the bakery. In my bad mood, was it the last thing I needed, his rude way of pulling on me, so I sent him like all the others into the desert. Tenderness and caresses I would have needed, but the desire to have sex was long gone. I returned alone to the house where I really was all alone, because my 3 young neighbors from the other half of the house, with whom I had gotten along very well and had at least some company, had moved out. I was more depressed here than I even had been in jail. There I had at least still illusions and dreams, but here was the hard reality. There were still the kids living in the street where Tanya and Theo were living, always showing openly their affection towards me, shared their experiences and their concerns with me, reported proudly of achievements at school or when Ada and Raphael found a new job where they earned a little pocket money. I was the first who knew about it. Apparently, I was the only adult taking these adolescent boys serious and had an open ear for them. I talked to them, pointed out risks such as unwanted pregnancies and sexually transmitted diseases. Raphael and Ada both had girls in their heads, and I warned them repeatedly to stay away from drugs and alcohol. Those 2 and all of their friends had been looking all over Itinga to find Sampa, without results, and shortly after his disappearance, they stood promptly with a horse in front of my gate. I just came from shopping and dropped my shopping bags in shock when I first saw the horse. Oh no, I really don't need a horse now, as much as I love animals, but I think that Pirata throws me out of here if I keep a horse in the yard. No, it wasn't meant for me. They just wanted to show it to me, and of course proudly demonstrate their riding skills, even without a saddle. How cruel people can be, I discovered, when these 2 sensitive boys showed me that this horse had no more ears, because one of the previous owners had cut them off. Lovingly, the boys were looking after this battered horse. I would have liked to invite the boys more often into my house, but I had concerns that this would be rising rumors that could have gotten me into unexpected difficulties when I was having teenage boys walking in and out of my house, especially in a dump like Itinga, where everyone was watching another, and Ada already appeared much older than his 13 years of age, very mature and adult. Thus, this surrogate mother-child relationship, unfortunately, was only limited mainly to the street.